Hello, and welcome to Hospitality and the Infinite Game, a podcast series focused on answering one simple question. What type of hospitality industry do we actually want to create? In these episodes, Michael and David discuss big ideas that might set the foundation for a different model of success. A model which would allow us to piece together a bold new way forward, where our businesses can thrive whilst making a positive impact on people, communities and the planet. We make no claims to have all the answers, far from it in fact, but we hope these conversations might just get you thinking. We are learning, and hopefully you'll learn with us. So join us. The game is afoot, and it's an infinite one.
Hey Michael.
Hello David.
I think we got a bit of a challenge today. This episode is gonna test us a little bit, I think. In theory, the title sounds pretty straightforward, right? Profit and purpose.
Yeah, hand in hand. But the problem is, like all the books, I was starting looking through books as we were preparing for this, and it was my job to find some kind of structure in this. And I found out that, this is actually, a lot of people talk about purpose.
Yes. And
also a lot of people talk about purpose, trumps profit, and so on. But I don't think that it's that simple. And as you'll probably find out as we discuss this the next 25 minutes, is that it is probably not that simple.
I think that's what I'm scared about. I almost have more questions than answers, but I guess maybe that's the part of this journey here is us exploring that. So yeah, let's see. I mean, I want to believe, this is the thing as well, I want to believe, we both want to believe that profit and purpose can go hand in hand, and that actually profit can and should, there's that dangerous word again, should be generated from a purpose-led business or having purpose in your business. But are we just wanting to believe that? Can we find enough reasons to make that stack up as a theory? So I guess if we're going to dig into that, the first question has to be, what do we mean by the word purpose? I know you have your definition, so hit me.
So the purpose is like, I think most businesses start, and every entrepreneur starts the business with a purpose in a way. And purpose doesn't have to be that you want to change the world or save the planet. Purpose could be that you just want to be the best workplace in the world. My purpose is that my product would add values to people's life. And I think sometimes purpose becomes a bit, you can't have a purpose if you're not part of saving the planet in a way. But I think it's much more complex than that. Actually, I think there's three main areas, because in my world, you can have a deeply genuine purpose, just creating a great place to work for people. If that's your intent as an entrepreneur, I want to create a great place to work for people, and then I believe we are going to create some great revenue stream and product solving that. Another thing could also be that maybe you are part of solving community problems.
Okay.
Where you say that, like, my purpose is to take homeless people from the street and give them a job, and Change Please is a great example of that. We mentioned him before here on the podcast. That's purpose for me as well. Like, there's a very strong purpose that drive everything you do in that business around purpose. And then there is the big one, the people who want to save the planet. So you would have something like Greenpeace. They are out there too. They're activists almost. Their solely purpose is always about saving the planet, and that's where it becomes very big and complex. But I think purpose is a direction as well.
Okay.
And many businesses forget that purpose always comes as something that ignites fire in people, but also it's about the direction of a business and the intent of that business is.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So there's a few points in there that neatly bring to mind. So you've almost highlighted people, community, and planet as they're different scales of purpose that you're discussing there, which actually I think is a really interesting way of looking at it. But all of those seem to be united by a selflessness or the pursuit of something bigger than yourself. So I guess that would be part of the definition of purpose, is that it is something bigger than us. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, and I think also that's what, I know some people say that they get out of bed every day to make money, but I don't think that makes them feel as a whole person. That's my belief. So it's actually that thing that makes you get out of bed every day in a way. But that doesn't mean it has to be this incredible wild thing that you want to change the world.
Right.
It can just be that, I want to create one job at a time and put a homeless person in that job and actually create a better life for them. So again, I think it could also be that you want to make sure that every product you sell is going to have a positive impact on the consumer's life as well.
That's interesting. So I guess actually that does link back up with the original episode we did on donut economics, where part of the question on how we need to look at the economic system we have is to understand that everything exists within a wider whole. We all exist within the planet, the community. We have staff. So the purpose really comes out of simply an acknowledgement that the complexity of the system is something we need to respond to. So the selflessness comes from really understanding that as individuals we can't do it all, and we need to collaborate. So therefore, to collaborate, we need something to unite us and move us along.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's also, when you talk about purpose in the world we live in today, I think also it's like in a way, our way of actually trying to make this paradigm shift that's happening, where we're going from a very industrial kind of way of operating to a more inclusive way. Somebody called it a teal paradigm, where we're all connected and we all understand we have a role to play and we need to find our own role, and it becomes like a spaghetti kind of world. And I think it comes from that kind of thing that there's like you're all human in a way. What you tried to say before, but all have to take our game to play in with that. And I think Simon Sinek talks about finding the circle of why, and he says that when you know what your individual purpose is, it's much easier for you to make better choices in a way. And I think taking that back to a business, when you know what your purpose is, what is the thing you want to impact. And I still believe, and maybe I'm a bit naive, but I believe that you need to have a purpose that's bigger than making profit if you want to last for decades. If you go back in history and look at businesses that succeed decades after decades and decades are still here, they had from the outset, the founder had from an outset a purpose that was bigger than himself. It was not just making money, it was actually doing something. I'm not saying that you can't build empires on just want to make money, because we've seen the examples of that.
Yes, I think we need to acknowledge that at the start, don't we? You need to have a purpose to make profits? Well, evidently no, because there are hundreds of examples of that within history. As you say, can that last for the long term, or do those companies always end up kind of fragmenting and being part of the normal boom bust cycle? I mean, I think Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, touches on that. Donut Economic touches on that, and all of those are interesting in terms of picking out specific examples that sort of support that theory. But I guess we should acknowledge that we are making a certain assumption that purpose, that word that is massively overused, like sustainability, but that idea of purpose is something, a set of principles or a principle or a vision that is bigger than yourself, because you acknowledge the existence of other human beings on this planet, and therefore we're trying to make sure we do something beyond ourselves. So that would be, I guess, our final definition.
Yeah, and I think just to touch a little bit more on purpose, because I think often purpose, again, it's becoming a thing that you think you need to write down. Purpose is actually the seed of your story. Okay. And I believe as we go forward as businesses, I know some businesses can still own infrastructure and energy sources and airplanes and stuff like that. Don't need a story right now, but I believe as we go forward, because like what has created this world is our ability to share stories. So your purpose is the seed for the story about you and why you're here and why I should join you or spend my hard-earned dollars with you, or pounds for that sake. And I think it comes down to, so if you don't revisit or don't have a clarity of your purpose direction, I call it, how are you then going to tell your story that's going to change something in the world?
Yes, that's really interesting actually, because that ties into I don't know if you've read Homo Deus by Noah Yuval Harari. So he talks in there about looking into the evolution of why basically have human beings been so incredibly successful at dominating the planet, probably too successful in many ways, and he pins it down to our ability to flexibly work together and kind of collaborate. And I guess what you've just highlighted there, that idea of storytelling and purpose, is what we as individuals do to try and bring people together, because you can't build a pyramid without a story, because there's no way people would join you to do it. I mean, that's a very bad example, because the pyramids were not a consensual activity for everyone involved in building them. But effectively, the modern day pyramids, when we're trying to make things happen, your point then is immediately we need something to unite around that will, and I know you spend a lot of time looking at this in what you do on a day-to-day basis, but that's the principle, is it, for you, that purpose is this seed, this kernel that everything else forms around?
So it's absolutely critical then when you look at purpose. It's a bit like being a farmer. You have to sometimes go back maybe and look at what you're growing and say, maybe I need to, I was growing corn now. Maybe I only need to grow potatoes, because that's give more sense, because things has developed, or I can maybe grow both things. But then go back and look at your purpose and say, what is our intent in the world we live in now? And because companies also evolve over time, and the purpose of them maybe existentially doesn't change, but where they are in the life cycles, the business, they might maybe change. I would think that you look at Warren Buffett. I don't think he set out his purpose to become a philanthropist from the outset. His purpose, he started probably with how much money can I make on Wall Street? And then he found out there was a bit of an empty place in that journey, and he went back and redefined his purpose around his wealth and said his wealth should be for doing good in the world. In a way.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that's when some of the complexity of questions come in for me as well. Yeah. Is it okay for somebody to build a career and make a lot of profit merely from understanding the mechanics of the financial systems, and then become a philanthropist towards the end of their life, and then try and make good and do good things? Arguably, they will be having an awful lot more impact than I will ever have in my life. But you could argue they didn't start from purpose to get the profit, but they've then moved in towards a purposeful life once they've made the profit. I mean, I'm kind of oversimplifying the analogy there, but I do think it's a really interesting question.
I think it stems out from the industrial society, where there was few winners and a lot of losers when it comes to financial gains, or the 1% or the 2% conversation in the world of wealth. And I think again that the world also need to change. We need to distribute wealth in a different way. So purpose in my world is not black or white if you have a lot of money or don't have a lot of money. Purpose is about this seed of how you want to live your life. Some people also call them principles, and some only call it your why. So why are you here? What do you want to do? And what impact are you going to have in life? So if you are a kind person and kind to people, you have massive impact. You are maybe changing others' life. Those people that just comes into a room, no matter what day it is, they always bring sunshine. They have their purpose is maybe to just shine a bit of light on other people's life with their energy. But I think purpose it's become such a overused word, as you say, and I think it's very important to see it. Taking it down to what I see it is the seed for that story you want to tell, that story you want to be part of, your hero's journey, as I normally say to people. What is your hero's journey? It doesn't mean that you need to solve all the complex problems in the world. And from an organization point of view, sometimes you need to find, it's difficult to find a cause sometimes, but often the reason why people find a cause is because they've been impacted by something themselves, either poverty, or they have seen something that changed their life, that maybe something happened with illness or something, and thereby they find out we need to do something about it. Or they seen, it comes to climate change, they've been in a part of the world where they suddenly saw something, how climate change was impacting people's life. And because climate change is not about, as you said, I think you said very rightly in the last episode, it's not about saving the planet. It's about saving us as a species.
Definitely.
And I think, and then if you need, again, something concrete to look at, think, okay, where should I find that purpose? And maybe you just look at what is the problems we need to solve here in the world. And the UN has helped us there. They have 17 development goals, from education to climate change to poverty, that we need to solve. And if you start to take part of that, your purpose suddenly have changed. So borrow that and use some of that lingo. You don't need to go into like a massive deep purpose conversation.
No, that's really interesting as well. And I think I also come back to that idea I think you've talked about before, about how if you're trying to do anything and build a business or a company, you need people around you. So you're going to be building a culture. And if you want to build that culture, which is what people do when you aren't around as the founder, then you need people to buy into the vision and purpose of what you're doing. And given that, I think, I can't remember who said it, but to get the most engaged employees, you need them to have purpose, mastery, and autonomy. Those are the three things people look for to get the most satisfaction out of their job. You need to start with purpose and then give people the autonomy to master skills within that and deliver that piece. So maybe purpose in that sense just gives us the ability to set the foundation for the stronger, best performing businesses, hopefully.
Yeah, and again, I think, going back, that was Daniel Pink that said that,
right,
in his in one of his books. And but what I think is interesting here from a company point of view, again, think about if you want to be the best of the best, because you don't build an organization to be mediocre or the last. You want to be the best. So if you want to win the game, it starts with understanding your purpose and the story you want to tell. So if you can't clarify that to your people, I think you're never going to have a winner's team. All the most successful business over time, I'm not saying there's a lot of people have made a lot of money fast within a few years, but the best companies that people like, you love and rave and keep on coming to, have this ability to keep on evolving their purpose and actually coming back to that all the time again. And those people, they last for decades. But again, it comes back to they are collected around, either conscious, unconscious, I believe, around an original purpose. And sometimes it wilts a bit. And then when you've seen it before, when they bring back the founder. Apple, as an example, Steve Jobs came back. Relived the purpose of Apple. It was not just to have 1 million computers, we're actually making the best computers and help people think differently. So Apple's purpose is different, and being different, think different. And then their product is a part of that story, but it's a lot about how they act as a culture as part of that story, purpose. And story and purpose, in my world, very well connected. And the problem is these things are so well connected in a way. But in a way, purpose for me is all about a simple word, direction.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting, because another way I've thought about it sometimes is almost to think about the opposite. And the opposite of purpose for me is actually apathy. Perhaps is as you say, is without direction, is a kind of, it's a shrug of the shoulders, isn't it? And there's no energy in that you can put into making something happen in the machine of a business or pursuing something. So I think that's interesting. And I guess the other question comes back to, as I touched on, can you make a profitable business without a purpose? Probably, but I guess the question has to be, why would you want to? Why? If we're talking about this podcast is about the kind of businesses we want to try and create, then we're trying to shape the future in the way that we believe is right, and surely having a purpose and building around that is just a kind of essential thing you have to do, right? You can't ask that question. It's really, what is the purpose?
I think it's quite interesting, if we have to put them out on a scale. I think there's there's two types of businesses in the world, and you said why would you create a business not to do something good? And I know in period maybe you can only do the essentials, like we're in right now. It's all about survival, talking all that. But maybe there's a brand X and brand Y, and brand X, they have customers, as you say. They have a past, they have an old business model, but now as the world become more and more awake for the problem is in they are probably starting to become a commodity, and they're fighting on price. And I think there's a big challenge between a company X and Y is that company X would focusing on fighting on price, commodity often, because there's no bigger story. So Apple is definitely not a commodity. That's probably you buying into a lifestyle. You're buying into becoming your raving fans in a way. And funny enough, these company that has gone in, I think you will see that when we look back in 3 years from now, and this is like me trying to look in crystal ball, you will see this business wide. They have fans. They have a future that's bigger than surviving the next quarter. It's about what they are moving ahead to do in the world, reducing impact on climate, making a better workplace, because that's an evolving thing as well. It's like a muscle you have to keep on training. If you stop going into the fitness center, your muscles mass will shrink, but as soon as you go back and work on that, you become stronger.
That's really interesting. I think it just makes me immediately reflect on what we mean by, or how we get to profit. We haven't really defined profit in this so far, and I guess it's almost profit in its simplest terms is earning more money from something you've produced than it took to produce that thing, whether it's a service or an object, etc. And the way you're talking about purpose is when you look at the economics of profit, it's about the value you add to those commodities you bring together to deliver something that is more valuable than you've obviously created. And purpose is a vehicle to add a huge amount more value. I mean, Apple is a really good example in that they are an extraordinarily successful, financially successful company, and that's built off of the fact that the value they add is way, way more than it costs them to actually do that stuff. So you can, in that sense, get a clear alignment between the positive economic outcome from putting purpose at the core of the company, and the profit that should come out at the end over a long period of time as well, because I guess it compounds over time.
Yeah, and I think that's the case again. It's a bit like if you start in investing, it's the compound impact. There will be some years you win and some you lose. I think sometimes it's easier to live out your purpose than others. But again, I think what you will see here, like I think this period we're going through now, and people talk about we are in a recession, all that thing. I think there will be some people that start fighting on price. Doesn't mean they don't have a purpose, but they become a commodity then. And I think often company that doesn't have a bigger purpose than making profit often become commodities over time. So if they can't keep people believing in that making money is the most important thing in life, and they can't get the team behind that, and I think at some point people will now, with all the things that's going on on Netflix and all the information that's out about, we're living in a world where we're much more connected than we think we are, that you understand that the business needs to have a bigger purpose than make just profit. It actually needs to make impact, and I think thereby these businesses become commodity. And I think the company that's already there, that's very purpose driven, like Apple is a great example of a purpose driven business. And maybe they don't say we're purpose driven, but they have a very strong purpose about what they want to achieve in the world, because they hope with the equipment they make people think big thinking, and then we can change the world to a better place. That was Steve Jobs. Then you can also have Patagonia, very purpose-driven business. And you will see them, I think, on the other side of this. And it doesn't mean everybody buys from them, but they understand the role that business have, and thereby that give a positive impact on the business. And it's easier to recruit, it's easier to get new customers, but again, it's a long game play again.
I was going to say, do you think therefore, in simple terms, I mean, I guess I'm making this binary, but is profit inherently short term and purpose inherently long term? Is profit inherently selfish and purpose inherently selfless? And we're trying to combine those two, the kind of the yin and yang of those in any business, because obviously we can't deny that profit is a result of intelligently running a business, right? I mean, that is the fuel that goes in and also comes out. Yeah.
And I actually agree with you, because I am very into, I said in the last episode, profit trumps everything. But again, how you use that profit and intent, how you develop the profit. if you have to break human rights, social rules, ethical things, and so on to run a business and make a profit, I don't believe that's a profitable business model. It's not good for all stakeholders. And that's what we need to think about. Is my business model actually doing good in the world? And the way I have to get to profit, is that a good place? I'm actually creating a great work environment. I know this is a journey and it's difficult. I'm not saying pointing fingers at anyone, but I think if your business is solely there for making profit and the way it gets to profit harms anyone else or the planet or communities, that's not a sustainable business in my world. And I think it's about, again, it's an emotion about what you do, the intent of what you do. But again, saying that, of course we need to make profit. Why? It doesn't matter if you have a great purpose if you don't make profit, because then you can't make impact.
Yeah.
So
okay, that's interesting.
It has to be a viable business, but again, it's the intent you have behind that business.
Because the other trap that you can see played out sometimes is where the purpose seems to be talked about in such a big grand way that perhaps even loses touch from the business. So WeWork is one that jumps to mind. I know as they were developing, I think what was the purpose at the moment, like to alter the consciousness of humanity, or something so detached from effectively subletting offices. But what we have to, I guess, ask questions. It's not very easy. It could be easy to delude yourself that this purpose thing is a real tangible thing within the organization. So I guess we need to make sure that we don't go down that path.
And I think also, like what you say there, I'm thinking how can they deliver on that purpose? And I think, again, when you create a purpose and have a purpose, and everybody has a purpose. There's a purpose buried in any organization. It has to be something they can act on a daily basis. It's something Apple can act daily on through their developing these laptops and phone, actually helping people think differently and connecting them in the world. So there's something they can do daily through their product or their service they are delivering. And I think that's the key thing. It has to be something you can live on a day-to-day basis, and it becomes tangible. So you actually need to make your purpose into a story. The story then becomes some principles about how you operate, beliefs, behaviors, which then are your values / your culture, and how you act as a business. And that then gets transformed into your product. I think the companies where you're happy to pay a premium for the product is actually because it's more than just a product. It's that story you buy into, the purpose. It's that feeling it gives you when you have it on, in a way. And you will say, well, no, but some people don't care because they can't afford things like that. And I agree on that. And that's the challenge again, because that ties into a world problem, doesn't it? That we have people that are so poor that they actually don't feel they can't do any change or any different things for the challenges we have in the world, because they just have to survive. So again, there's an uneven distribution of wealth in the world. We can go in again. So, but profit and purpose does belong together, and it has been proving to work. There's some companies we all use in business cases around the world in business schools, but often the reason why they made profit when I went to business school often is not told. Even Unilever, with Paul Polman, came in and said that he was one of the first leaders in way back, and he probably been forgotten a bit, but he talked about a triple bottom line. It has to be good for people, planet, and profitability for the shareholders, but they need to be equally balanced. And he was the first one that brought up that approach, and Unilever still operates after that in a way, and a lot of people don't know that. But again, if you make money in a certain environment, you need to put money back into that environment, not just in creating jobs, because that's often what I use, but actually doing more. You actually have a citizen's right to do that if you're in the position.
I like that idea of citizens, and I guess it comes back, the diagram in my head almost becomes circular again.
Yeah.
That, I often think of the economy and money as, we need to see it as these are all systems that are flowing.
Yeah.
the job of me trying to earn money is not so I can go and store it in a bank vault and just sort of jump into all the cash. It's so that I can use that money to support my lifestyle, to buy things from other people, to employ other people, to do all those sorts of things. So we need to, I guess, see the constant changing, fluctuating system that we live within, and how purpose really reinforces that system in a good way, and gives us a method to make that system flow, I guess, is what we're trying to say, which is actually quite interesting. I wasn't sure we were going to end up here on this episode today.
It took a surprising change. We had actually prepared a script or some talking points, but we haven't used them much, I must say, because we evolved very quickly from that. But again, I would say that this is, again, like reading in the books and gone back and looked in some of the books. I'm very interested in how you can actually use purpose as a tool in leadership, because a lot of people talk about how we rehumanize organization, and we've talked about before in these episodes about Gallups and people are disengaged, about 83% of people on the planet are disengaged in their work and so on. And I actually think it comes from we're not spending enough time as organization and leaders really to understand our own purpose, the organization purpose, and actually breaking that down in something actionable. And you can see, again, we mentioned Apple and Patagonia, they live it out into their products. And that makes them, almost, I couldn't imagine a world where they don't exist in 20 years' time, but maybe I'm wrong. Everything can change. But again, it's again, if you think about founders that has to come back into the business. I think Starbucks is a great example. They were in a debt spiral. Howard Schultz came back. He said that, okay, it's all about coming back to our purpose. Our purpose is to bring values into these communities. So it started actually about how we actually, treat our people. And at that point, they were like cutting health insurance on the people. And he said, if you want me to solve this, you need to reinstate health insurance to all our employees. So again, his purpose was actually building coffee shops in communities that, first of all, was good for the people who was employed, and they had benefits that was better than the average. And then was to create a third place from home. That was like his individual purpose, and with Starbucks origin. But they forgot that a bit in the scale of thing.
Yeah.
So they got reconnected to their purpose because they could bring him. One day he's not there anymore, and they can't bring him back. So therefore, then you can ask the question. I discussed with some people: have they then succeeded having the purpose, living, moving on, being there invisibly, no matter who leave the company? Because I haven't found the perfect example of where a founder leaves the company and the strong purpose stays. I think Whole Food is another great example. Very purpose driven from the outset. Now owned by Amazon. Will they keep on having that Whole Foods purpose? And is that a purpose only for elitist people that can afford shopping in Whole Food?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
That's really interesting. And what I'm actually reflecting on as we come to the end of this, our sort of 6th episode, is, do I have more questions than I had answers at the beginning of us setting out on this journey? I think it's been interesting so far, both of us trying to see how we can ask some questions and find some answers of how we can build a better model for the future and the industry that we both serve. How do you feel this has gone? Do you feel that you're learning, or do you feel...
I feel that I actually know less than I actually thought I would about this, even though something I've been studying for years, and actually deeply believe that we have to participate in making the planet a better place for people, communities, and the planet. I found out that I'd even not even close to have an answer for a perfect model about how you would implement this. What I've learned is that this is much more complex than I thought. But I also another element of that is that actually is hope. There's things we can do. There's programs like the B Corp thing where you actually can start working towards it. And I think it's about accepting you can't just, it's not like now I want to go and do delivery like my neighbor is doing delivery and they're successful with it. This is like almost like a spiritual journey of changing our mindsets as well, because we all need to pay our bills, so we're struggling with these things. So I think what we have learned is that We have not even touched the surface, and we haven't found. We actually thought we will have like an overview and a model for people.
We basically failed after 6 episodes to have an overview. We've actually got more questions. I think we need to set out on a longer journey here, Michael. Hopefully everyone will
it's like the pilgrim journey, you know? The pilgrim's journey in Spain, and we're walking the journey now. And I think we will reflect and find out how we can come back, because of course we haven't answered the question we started out with.
Yeah. How do we create the model for a better industry? If anyone has any ideas or suggestions, then definitely send them to us.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, well, see you later.
So that's the end for today. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope that it sparked off an idea or two for you. We'll make sure to include any links and references in the show notes, but if you'd like to start a conversation, you can email michael@hospitalitymavericks.com or david@objectspaceplace.com. You can also find them roaming around on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect. Finally, if you're enjoying this series, please consider letting the world know by honouring us with a 5-star rating or even giving us a review. Okay, goodbye for now. Catch you next time for more discussions on hospitality and the infinite game.